A secret whispered in an ancient temple can travel hundreds of feet through solid stone. These are not ghost stories, but real unexplained acoustic anomalies, mysterious sonic features crafted by our ancestors. By the end of this journey, you will understand how these ancient soundscapes challenge everything we thought we knew about early engineering and spirituality. We will explore why a pyramid's chamber might resonate like a giant bell, and how a simple hand clap at a Mayan temple perfectly mimics a sacred bird's call. These stones hold echoes of a forgotten science, one that could manipulate consciousness and commune with the divine. What do you believe our ancestors were truly trying to hear? To hear what the ancients heard, we need a new kind of listening. This is the goal of archaeoacoustics, a field that treats ancient spaces not just as silent ruins, but as living instruments. Imagine a team in a dark chamber, not with shovels, but with speakers and sensitive microphones. They send a tone through the stillness and record how the stone answers back. The data reveals a hidden architecture of sound, a sonic blueprint left behind by the builders. This work connects the dots between the physics of a vibration, the archaeology of a site, and the human experiences of those who gathered there. It asks a profound question. Did these cultures design their sacred spaces not just for the eye, but definitively for the ear? Consider the concept of resonance. Every object has a natural frequency at which it prefers to vibrate. Tap a wine glass and it sings a specific note. Now, scale that idea up to a massive stone chamber. If you create a sound inside it that matches the room's natural frequency, the entire space can begin to hum in sympathy, amplifying the noise in a deep, powerful way. This isn't an accident. It requires precise dimensions and materials. Then there's reverberation, the ghost of a sound that lingers in the air after the source has stopped. In a modern concert hall, engineers carefully tune this effect, but in a narrow stone passageway deep underground, a long reverberation can transform a single voice into a haunting, layered chorus that seems to come from everywhere at once. Some researchers, like acoustic scientist Stephen Waller, take this further. He proposed that the very arrangement of massive stones, like those at Stonehenge, could be influenced by sound wave interference. When two identical sounds meet, they can cancel each other out or build into louder peaks, creating zones of silence and sound. Waller's experiments suggest that if you were to stand in the center of such an arrangement, the pattern of stones around you might create a powerful auditory illusion, making it seem as though the megaliths themselves are blocking sound, giving them a perceived supernatural presence. This foundational science shifts our perspective entirely. We are no longer just looking at old buildings. We are preparing to listen to their intended function, a function that may have been central to ritual, memory, and what was perceived as communication with another realm. With this lens, let's begin our journey to the first site, where a simple clap unlocks a mystery. A whisper can defy the very nature of sound within the dome of St. Paul's Cathedral. High above the cathedral floor, a circular walkway known as the Whispering Gallery presents one of the world's most elegant acoustic puzzles. If you press your lips close to its wall and softly speak, your words will travel with uncanny clarity along the curve of the immense dome, reaching someone standing directly opposite you, over 100 feet away. It feels like magic, a private conversation conducted across a vast public space. The secret lies in the gallery's perfect circular shape. The sound waves from a whisper, rather than scattering in all directions, are guided along the concave stone surface. They cling to the curve, losing very little energy as they journey around the room. This is a whispering gallery wave, a focused channel of sound created by architecture itself. While we now understand the physics, the intention behind it remains a beautiful mystery. Sir Christopher Wren, the cathedral's architect, was a brilliant scientist of his era. Did he calculate this effect, embedding a secret auditory feature into his grand design? Or was this enchanting phenomenon a stunning, happy accident of his pursuit of geometric perfection? The gallery stands as a powerful bridge in our story. It demonstrates that long before modern acoustic science, builders could harness sound through shape and space. It primes our ears to listen for similar but far older mysteries where the line between accident and ancient engineering completely blurs. From a whispering gallery of polished stone, we descend into the earth's silent embrace. The Saflieni hypogeum on Malta is not a building constructed, but a world meticulously hollowed out from solid limestone over 5,000 years ago. This is a labyrinth of darkness, a three-level subterranean network of chambers, passages, and halls that served as both a sanctuary and a final resting place. Within this profound quiet, one small room holds a sonic secret that defies its Neolithic origins. They call it the Oracle Chamber. This oval space, carved with stone tools by hands that knew no iron, possesses an acoustic property so precise it feels intentional. If a person with a deep, resonant voice speaks or chants into a specific carved niche in the wall, something extraordinary happens. That sound does not fade. It is projected with shocking clarity and power, traveling through the underground complex, reaching areas far removed, making the very rock around you seem to vibrate with a low hum. The chamber listens as well as it speaks. Sounds generated in the larger halls elsewhere in the hypogeum are drawn into this room, where they become amplified and strangely distorted, layered into an eerie resonance that seems to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. It is an environment designed for auditory illusion. Researcher Dr. Paolo De Bertollis and his team measured this space, finding the Oracle Chamber resonates most powerfully at a frequency of around 110 Hz. This is a low, rhythmic hum near the lower range of a male voice. Now, this is where the mystery deepens beyond simple acoustics. Separate studies in sound and brain activity have suggested that sustained exposure to tones around this specific frequency can produce shifts in brainwave patterns. For some individuals, this can correlate with states of relaxed focus, a quieting of the brain's language centers, and an increased tendency toward inward, imagistic thought states often associated with meditation or ritual trance. The convergence is startling. Within a sacred space used for ceremony and connection to ancestors, we find an architectural feature that naturally produces a frequency potentially conducive to altered states of consciousness. Was this a magnificent accident of carving an oval room into limestone? Or did the builders of the hypogeum, through millennia of trial, observation, and oral tradition, discover that certain shapes in stone could not only carry a voice but could also shape the mind of the listener? The precision mocks the simplicity of their tools. This is not the grandeur of a cathedral dome, but something more intimate and profound, a technology of consciousness carved directly into the living rock, suggesting a lost science where spirituality and acoustics were one and the same. The silence within the Great Pyramid is a dense, palpable thing, broken only by the hum of modern ventilation. Yet, for those who listen beyond the quiet, the very stones of this ancient wonder seem to hold a memory of sound. High above the desert floor, in the stark confines of the king's chamber, visitors and researchers have long noted something strange about the acoustics. This room, constructed from immense, polished blocks of red granite, does not behave like an ordinary stone box. The air feels different, charged with a potential for resonance. When a sound is made here, a deep chant, the strike of a ceremonial bell, even a sustained vocal tone, it does not simply echo. It swells, it lingers, it fills the granite cavity with a sustained, humming vibration that seems to emanate from the walls themselves. This is the signature of a resonating chamber, an architectural space tuned, whether by accident or design, to amplify and sustain specific frequencies. Acoustic measurements taken within the chamber have revealed a fascinating sonic landscape. The hard, smooth granite surfaces reflect sound with incredible efficiency, creating pronounced reverberation. More intriguingly, the precise dimensions of the room may support the formation of standing waves at particular frequencies. Imagine the sound waves bouncing back and forth between the parallel walls, perfectly aligning so that the peaks and troughs reinforce each other, creating zones where the sound is powerfully amplified and others where it nearly cancels out into silence. To experience this is to stand inside what feels like a giant, silent bell waiting to be rung. The theories that emerge from this phenomenon are as grand as the pyramid itself. Some researchers propose that rituals performed within the chamber could have used sustained chanting or percussion to create these standing waves, essentially bathing the space in a blanket of vibrational energy. The speculative idea is that this energy might have been intended for a ceremonial purpose, perhaps to aid in a spiritual journey or to consecrate the space in a way we no longer comprehend. Mainstream Egyptology rightly anchors the pyramid's primary purpose in the realm of the sacred and the funerary, a colossal machine for the king's ascent to the stars. Yet, the persistent acoustic reports from its heart present a compelling parallel mystery. Could the builders, masters of astronomy, mathematics, and engineering on a staggering scale, have also been masters of a forgotten sonic science? Did they understand that by choosing granite over limestone for this inner sanctum, by calculating its proportions with celestial precision, they were also tuning a resonant instrument? The pyramid's silence today may be a mask. Its true voice, one of low frequencies and amplified intention, might only speak when awakened by the correct key, a sonic code lost to time, inviting us to wonder if the grandeur of Giza was meant not just for the eyes of the gods, but for their ears as well. The precision of the pyramid's resonance finds a playful, yet equally profound, echo thousands of miles away. On the sun-baked limestone plains of the Yucatan, the Great Pyramid of El Castillo at Chichen Itza stands as a monumental calendar in stone. Its 4 staircases each have 91 steps, which, with a shared platform at the top, total the 365 days of the solar year. But this masterwork of astronomy holds another, more audible secret. Stand before its towering facade and clap your hands once. What returns to your ears is not a simple, dull repetition. It is a sharp, descending chirp that vividly mimics the call of the sacred Quetzal bird. This is an acoustic signature, a sonic fingerprint deliberately etched into the architecture. The magic is in the staircase's exact geometry. Each step acts as a separate sound reflector. The sound waves from your clap hit these staggered surfaces at microscopically different times, bouncing back to you not as one solid echo, but as a rapid cascade of diminishing reflections. Our brains interpret this quick series of pulses as a frequency-modulated chirp, a perfect auditory illusion of a living creature. The connection to the Quetzal is deeply intentional. For the Maya, this resplendent bird with its iridescent green feathers was a symbol of the sky, freedom, and the divine. It was intrinsically linked to their paramount deity, Kukulkan, the feathered serpent god who descended the very stairs of this pyramid during the equinox light show. By engineering the temple to sing with the voice of the sacred bird, the Maya achieved something extraordinary. They fused art, religion, and applied physics into a single experience. The pyramid was no longer just a structure to be seen or climbed. It became an instrument to be played, a device that transformed a human gesture, a clap into a divine response. Every visitor who performs this simple act today participates in a ritual dialogue across centuries, hearing the stone affirm a connection between the earthly and the spiritual that was calculated, crafted, and left waiting in the angles of the stairs. It is a testament to a culture that wove meaning into every dimension of their world, proving that their genius was not only written in glyphs and aligned with stars, but also encoded in sound. The voice of the pyramid is a sharp, engineered chirp, but in the fields of Carnac, the land itself seems to whisper. Across the damp, green landscape of Brittany, over 3,000 ancient standing stones march in eerie, parallel rows for miles. These are the Carnac alignments, a Neolithic puzzle of staggering scale. Their silent procession under the brooding sky is captivating, but some who walk among them report something more than silence. They describe a sensation, a low, persistent hum or a subtle vibration that seems to emanate from the ground or the stones themselves, often felt more than heard, particularly in the quiet of dawn or when a certain mist hangs in the air. It is an ambient presence, a sonic texture woven into the place. Skeptics offer logical explanations. Perhaps it is the wind, channeled and amplified as it sighs through countless narrow fissures in the granite. It could be the distant, muffled rumble of the ocean, or even a trick of the mind, a psychological suggestion born from the awe of the sight. Yet, the consistency of the reports invites a deeper curiosity. Alternative researchers have proposed more speculative ideas. Could these massive stones be positioned along subtle geological fault lines, where the Earth itself releases low-frequency vibrations or infrasound that is below our normal hearing but felt in the body? Or, more intriguingly, might the entire arrangement function as a colossal resonant array? Imagine the rows not just as sight lines to the solstice sun, but as a kind of giant sonic lens. The spaces between the stones, their specific heights and distances, could potentially interact with the wind and natural acoustics of the open plain to filter and shape sound, creating zones of focused vibration or a pervasive landscape-wide drone. This shifts our perspective dramatically. It asks us to consider that the builders of Carnac may have been designing for an experience beyond the visual. The alignments are often studied for their potential astronomical connections, but what if their purpose was also auditory? What if walking among these stones was meant to be a full-body experience, where the hum of the earth and the arranged silence of the megaliths work together to induce a specific state of awareness for ceremony or pilgrimage? This anomaly challenges us to expand our definition of ancient engineering. It suggests that some sites were not merely monuments to be seen, but immersive environments to be felt, holistic sensory experiences where the very ground was part of the ritual. The true function of Carnac may lie not in a single explanation, but in the combined effect of stone, sky, sound, and human presence, a symphony of sensation we are only beginning to perceive. The subtle hum of Carnac's fields gives way to the clear, engineered voice of the Andes. High on the steep slopes of Peru, the Inca and the cultures before them mastered a different kind of acoustic art, one carved directly into the bones of the mountains themselves. At the ceremonial site of Quetzal, a natural amphitheater of living rock has been sculpted with startling precision. Intricate channels, staircases, and a series of curious niches are cut into the stone, and they do not appear to be merely decorative. Stand before one of these niches and speak softly into it. Your voice does not fade against the rock. Instead, it is captured, focused, and projected with uncanny clarity to a specific spot across the complex, as if the stone itself is whispering your words to a distant listener. These are not accidental echoes. They function like primitive but brilliantly effective sound mirrors, using the hard, smooth surfaces of the carved channels to reflect and guide sound waves along a predetermined path. The purpose seems deeply practical yet profoundly ceremonial. In a culture where a single leader or priest might need to address a gathering in a vast, open space, this technology allowed a normal speaking voice to carry with authority and clarity, eliminating the need to shout. But the intention likely ran deeper than simple amplification. Imagine a ritual at dusk, a priest chants into a specific niche, and his voice, transformed and directed by the stone, seems to emanate from another part of the sacred complex entirely, perhaps from a carved representation of a puma or a serpent. The effect would be dramatic, creating an auditory illusion of a disembodied, divine presence speaking from the mountain. This integration is what makes these anomalies so compelling. The sound manipulation is not an added feature, it is woven seamlessly into the very fabric of the sacred landscape. The channels at Ollantaytambo and the niches at Cuenco show a culture that observed, experimented, and applied acoustic principles as a fundamental part of their architectural language. They understood their environment not just as a place to build upon, but as a material to be tuned, transforming the immutable mountain into a responsive instrument for ceremony and communication, proving their genius was etched in both form and function. The stones of the Andes speak with directed clarity, but in the highlands of Anatolia, a gate sings. At the ancient Hittite capital of Hattusa, a formidable entrance known as the Lion Gate guards the city's ruins. This is not merely a passageway of stone, it is a threshold carved with intention, flanked by two massive, protective lion sculptures. Yet, beyond its imposing visual presence, the gate possesses a hidden layer of expression. Visitors and researchers have noted that the enormous limestone blocks forming the doorways themselves can produce something unexpected. When struck gently with a hand or a small stone, they do not give a dull thud. Instead, they emit a clear harmonic ring or a deep, resonant tone that seems to hum from within the rock itself. The likely explanation lies in material science. The specific density and internal tension of these large limestone slabs, combined with how they are set within the architecture, allow them to vibrate like a giant, crude tuning fork when activated. It may well have been an unintentional byproduct of the builder's choice of stone and their method of construction. But for the Hittites, a mighty Bronze Age empire, a gate was never just a functional entry point. It was a potent symbol, a liminal space marking the boundary between the safe, ordered world of the city and the chaotic, unknown wilds beyond. Gates were thresholds between worlds, guarded by deities and mythical creatures like the stone lions to ward off malevolent forces. In this context, an accidental sonic feature could have been instantly reinterpreted as a divine signature. Imagine the ceremonial importance. The arrival of a king or a high priest would not be a silent event. As they approached, an attendant might strike the stone, causing the gate itself to ring out with a solemn, resonant tone. This sound would announce the crossing of a sacred boundary, a sonic fanfare created by the living rock. More mystically, that same resonant hum could be perceived as the voice of the guardian spirits within the stone, an audible proof of their protective power actively repelling evil. This anomaly is a powerful reminder. It shows us that acoustic wonders were not confined to temples and tombs. They could emerge from the most practical, defensive structures, seamlessly blurring any modern distinction we might try to make between secular architecture and sacred design. For the ancients, the spiritual was woven into the fabric of everyday life, and a gate that sang was simply a gate that was alive, doing its duty in more ways than one. The voice of a Hittite gate gives way to the deep, resonant hum of a tomb older than time itself. In the misty green expanse of Ireland's Boyne Valley, a great, grass-covered mound rises from the earth. This is Newgrange, a passage tomb constructed over 5,000 years ago, centuries before the pyramids of Giza took shape. It is a monument to the dead and a precise astronomical instrument, famous for the single beam of sunlight that pierces its inner chamber at dawn on the winter solstice. But beyond this breathtaking play of light lies another, equally profound sensory experience waiting in the dark. The journey inside is a passage into the earth, down a long, narrow corridor of massive, upright stones that leads to a central, cross-shaped chamber. The ceiling above you is a marvel of ancient engineering, a corbelled roof of overlapping stone slabs that rises into a perfect, sealed dome in the darkness. This is not just a shelter from the elements, it is a carefully crafted acoustic vessel. Modern sound tests within this silent space have revealed its hidden voice. Rhythmic chanting, the steady beat of a skin drum, or even the collective breath of a gathered group does not simply echo here. The sound is captured, swirled, and amplified by the hard, smooth surfaces and the precise, narrowing geometry of the corbelled roof. It produces a powerful, immersive reverberation, a dense blanket of sound that fills the chamber completely, seeming to press in from all sides. The effect is one of total auditory immersion. In a ritual context, this would have been transformative. Imagine a ceremony held in that profound darkness, lit only by flickering torchlight. As voices rose in chant, the very stones would answer, multiplying the sound into a thunderous, resonant chorus that vibrated in the chest and the bones. This sonic environment would have magnified every ritual action, making the experience not just visual, but overwhelmingly physical and auditory. The acoustic design suggests the builders possessed an intuitive, or perhaps even a calculated, understanding of how to manipulate perception through architecture. They created a sensory-sealed environment, a stone womb deep within the earth, where the boundary between the living and the ancestors, between human voice and the voice of the mound itself, would have blurred into a single, resonant unity. The purpose was likely communion, using controlled sound and controlled light to open a doorway in perception, guiding the living into a shared space with those who came before, within a chamber that was tuned to hold their collective intention. Deep within the ancient stone womb of Newgrange, sound was a resonant, immersive force. But in the sun-scorched ruins of Hampi, India, sound becomes melody carved in granite. The 16th century Vitala temple is a masterpiece of the Vijayanagara Empire, a sprawling complex of breathtaking sculpture where gods and legends are frozen in stone. Its most celebrated feature is the iconic stone chariot, an eternal monument pulled by stone elephants. Yet, just steps away within the temple's Ranga Mantapa, or concert hall, rests an acoustic marvel that challenges our understanding of craftsmanship. Here stand 56 pillars, each one a dense cluster of slender, intricately carved stone columns. They appear as solid and silent as any other part of the temple. But they are not. When tapped gently with a thumb or a small wooden mallet, these granite pillars do not offer a dull thud. They sing. Each of the smaller columns within a cluster emits a clear, distinct musical note, the tones varying across the pillar to mimic the sounds of traditional Indian instruments. One column rings with the deep, resonant tone of a mridangam drum, another chimes with the metallic twang of a sitar's string, and still others produce the softer notes of a flute. It is a stone orchestra waiting for 5 centuries for a conductor. The prevailing explanation points to both material and immense skill. The specific granite quarried for this temple is believed to contain unusual concentrations of metallic ore, giving the stone a natural propensity to resonate with a purer tone. But the material alone is not the answer. The artisans had to know with absolute precision how to shape it. They carved each supporting column to a specific thickness and height, tuning it like a giant, solid tuning fork. The slightest error in measurement or the strike of a chisel in the wrong spot would have resulted in a dead note, a silent column in the symphony. This was not decorative carving. It was high-precision acoustic engineering in an age without digital tuners or sonic scanners. The intention seems beautifully clear: to create a permanent instrument for devotional music. Imagine a ceremony within this hall where priests or musicians moved between the pillars, gently tapping them in sequence to accompany chants and hymns. The very architecture of the temple would become the music, the gods serenaded by melodies born from the living rock of the earth itself. It represents a perfect fusion of art, devotion, and applied science. Yet the mystery deepens with a profound loss. While we can still hear the notes today, the precise knowledge of how to create such pillars, the exact quarrying techniques, the tuning methods, the secret understanding of the stone's sonic heart has faded from memory. We are left with the magnificent effect but not the blueprint, listening to the echoes of a skill so advanced it turned a temple into an instrument and left a song permanently etched in stone for the ages. The stone pillars of Hampi sang with crafted precision, but other ancient builders solved the problem of sound with a simpler, hidden technology. Scattered across the ancient world, from the sun-bleached theaters of Greece to the ceremonial platforms of Mesoamerica, lies evidence of a remarkably clever acoustic secret. Builders would embed rows of empty terracotta vases into the very fabric of their amphitheaters, placing them carefully within cavity walls or beneath the stone seating rows. To the eye, they were invisible, but to the ear, they were transformative. These were not decorative urns, but functional instruments, acting as what we now call Helmholtz resonators. The principle is elegant. Each vase, with its hollow body and narrow neck, is tuned to a specific frequency, much like the air in a bottle hums when you blow across its top. When sound waves in the theater hit that specific frequency, the air inside the vase vibrates powerfully, absorbing that particular tone. This might sound counterintuitive. Why absorb sound to amplify it? The genius is in the filtering. In a large, open stone theater, sound doesn't just travel forward. It bounces chaotically, creating a muddle of overlapping echoes that can muffle speech and turn music into a confusing roar. These resonant vases acted as a targeted cleanup crew. By absorbing specific, problematic frequencies that caused the worst reverberation and distortion, they effectively cleared the acoustic space, allowing the desired sounds, the actor's voice, the musician's note, to come through with much greater clarity and purity. The effect was a natural, wide-area sound enhancement. At a place like the famous theatre of Epidaurus in Greece, renowned for its perfect acoustics, this hidden network of vessels likely worked in concert with the bowl-shaped geometry to carry a whisper from the stage to the very last row, thousands of feet away. This was not magic but applied empirical science. The widespread use of this technique, appearing independently in different cultures, points to a profound shared discovery. Through observation and experimentation, ancient engineers identified a common problem: how to address a massive crowd, and arrived at a common, elegant solution using the materials at hand. It represents a lost chapter in the history of technology, one written not in scrolls, but in clay and hidden in the walls, proving that long before electronic amplification, humanity had already mastered the art of making silence speak. The hidden vases of ancient theaters cleaned and clarified sound, but some cultures chose to build where the earth itself was already singing. Across the deserts of our world, a strange and powerful music emerges not from stone but from shifting sand. In places like the Singing Sand Mountain near China's Mogao Caves, or the dunes that stretch toward ancient Egyptian monuments, a peculiar phenomenon occurs. When the sand on a steep dune face slides in a great avalanche, it does not fall in silence. It produces a deep, resonant boom that can be felt in the chest as much as heard, a low-frequency hum that can last for several minutes and carry for miles across the barren landscape. This is not the wind, it is the sound of countless grains of sand sliding in perfect synchronization. Scientists explain that under very specific conditions of grain size, humidity, and the friction of the slide, the sand layers begin to vibrate in unison, like the surface of a massive, slow-moving speaker, pushing waves of sound through the dry air. For us, it is a fascinating geological quirk. For an ancient culture listening in a pre-industrial silence, it would have been the undeniable voice of the land itself. The consistent association of these sonic dunes with sacred sites is what turns a natural wonder into an acoustic anomaly of profound significance. The builders of the Mogao caves, who filled caverns with Buddhist art of breathtaking beauty, did not place their sanctuary next to a singing mountain by accident. In Egypt, the placement of certain monuments seems to align with these auditory landscapes. This suggests a deliberate choice, a form of site selection that considered acoustics as a primary spiritual resource. Imagine a shaman or a priest guiding a community across a silent desert. They crest a dune and with a single step trigger a deep, booming chorus from the earth. In that moment, the boundary between the mundane and the divine would shatter. Such a sound, unpredictable and immensely powerful, would naturally be attributed to gods, spirits, or ancestors residing within the landscape. It was a ready-made theophany, a demonstration of sacred presence. Therefore, positioning a temple or a tomb within earshot of such a phenomenon was a way to permanently tether human worship to this divine voice. The architecture did not need to create the sound. It merely needed to frame it, to provide a stage from which to witness the performance of the earth. This reveals a layer of ancient intention we often overlook. While we analyze sites for strategic resources like water or defensible ground, we must also consider the resource of sound. These cultures exhibited a deep reverence for the entire sensory environment, seeking out places where the world spoke on its own terms. They wove the unpredictable, majestic music of the planet directly into their cosmology, building not just to be seen, but to listen, and to be answered by the living ground beneath their feet. The desert's booming dunes were a public declaration from the earth, but some ancient sounds were meant only for a chosen few. Deep beneath the streets of the Roman world, hidden from the sun and the uninitiated, lay the Mithraea. These were not grand public temples, but long, narrow, subterranean chambers built to resemble sacred caves, dedicated to the secretive worship of the god Mithras. Their architecture was intentionally oppressive and immersive, a symbolic journey into the underworld. The very shape of these spaces, a long tunnel with a curved, barrel-vaulted ceiling, created an acoustic phenomenon as deliberate as it was disorienting. A whispered word, a confidential instruction, or a chant spoken softly at the far end of this stone tunnel would not fade into the damp air. Instead, it would travel with unsettling clarity along the curved ceiling, arriving at the opposite end as a clear, intimate message, as if the speaker were standing right beside you. This whispering gallery effect was no architectural accident. It was a tool perfectly calibrated for the needs of a mystery cult. The rituals of Mithraism were tiered, involving stages of initiation where secret knowledge was progressively revealed. In the dim, flickering light of oil lamps, with the air thick with the smell of earth and incense, this acoustic trick would have been profoundly powerful. A senior priest could stand at one end, perhaps before an altar depicting Mithras slaying the cosmic bull, and his whispered words would seem to travel through the stone itself, reaching the ears of a new initiate at the far end of the chamber. The voice would be disembodied, its source unclear, making it seem as though the knowledge came not from a man, but from the god residing within the cave itself. This direct harnessing of sound for psychological and religious impact is starkly clear. The acoustics serve to amplify the sense of mystery, to enforce secrecy by allowing private communication within a group setting, and most importantly, to blur the line between human instruction and divine revelation. The architecture itself became an active participant in the ritual, a collaborator in the theater of belief. It demonstrates a sophisticated understanding that controlling the sensory environment, what was seen, smelled, and especially heard, was fundamental to shaping spiritual experience. The Mithraeum's whispering tunnel was not about amplifying power, but about focusing intimacy and mystery, turning the very physics of sound into a mechanism of faith. The secret whispers of Malta's underground oracle chamber find their counterpart in the open air, on windswept cliffs overlooking the sea. Above the hypogeum, the megalithic temples of Haga Kim and Mnajdra stand as silent sentinels, their colossal limestone blocks arranged into forms that predate Stonehenge by 1,000 years. We have long marveled at their visual grandeur, but now researchers are listening to their empty spaces, discovering that these were not just temples to be seen, but entire soundscapes to be experienced. The architecture here works on a grand, environmental scale. Picture the semicircular forecourts like giant stone bowls open to the sky. These spaces are not random. Acoustic studies suggest they functioned as natural amplifiers, capturing the sounds of ceremony chants, drums, the gathered voices of a community, and holding them within the sacred precinct, wrapping participants in a cocoon of resonant noise. The thick, towering walls did more than define a boundary. They created sharp acoustic shadows and deliberate reflection points. A voice projected from the central altar area would be caught by the curved facade and reflected back inward, creating a layered effect, while sound escaping outward would be channeled in specific directions, perhaps toward the sea or a neighboring ritual site. This indicates a sophisticated, macro-scale understanding of sound behavior. The builders were not merely stacking stones for shelter or symbolism. They were sculpting the very air within their holy places. They positioned these massive slabs to control how sound moved where it gathered and where it was silenced. Imagine a ritual at dawn within Haga Kim. As the community gathered in the forecourt, their collective chant would not simply dissipate into the morning breeze. It would be captured by the stone embrace, reverberating between the walls, building in intensity, and becoming a tangible, vibrating presence that filled the entire complex. This transforms our understanding of these sites. They become immersive auditory environments, where the architecture guaranteed that ritual sound would behave in predictable, powerful ways. The experience was designed to be total, to saturate the senses and dissolve the individual into the collective voice of the ceremony, proving that for these temple builders, sacred space was defined as much by its sound as by its stone. The immersive soundscapes of Malta's temples were contained by stone walls, but on the vast, arid plains of southern Peru, an ancient culture painted its intentions directly onto the floor of the desert. The Nazca lines are a monumental gallery of geometric shapes and animal figures, so large they can only be fully comprehended from the air. For decades, the mystery has been a visual one. Why create art you cannot see? Yet, a new question is emerging from the silence of that desert. What if the purpose was not only to be seen, but to be heard? Some researchers propose a fascinating auditory dimension to these immense geoglyphs. The theory, explored by figures like Dr. David E. Lewis, suggests that the very form of the lines may have been designed to interact with the environment's most constant force, the wind. The long, perfectly straight lines and wide trapezoids etched into the desert crust are not just shallow scratches. They are channels, subtle grooves that alter the flow of air across the plain. When the powerful, consistent winds of the Nazca region sweep across these features, they could potentially be funneled and modulated, creating specific tones, harmonic hums, or low-frequency drones. The sound would not be a melody in the traditional sense, but a landscape-scale vibration, a voice emerging from the interaction between human design and elemental force. While this idea remains speculative and difficult to prove, it powerfully reframes our perspective. It asks us to consider the Nazca lines not as a static picture, but as a component in a dynamic, multi-sensory ritual space. Imagine a ceremonial procession walking the length of a miles-long straight line. The visual experience would be one of stark geometry, a path leading to the horizon. But the auditory experience would be equally profound. The wind, shaped by the very path beneath their feet, would create a constant, enveloping soundscape, a sonic companion to the journey. The wide trapezoids could act as giant resonating chambers, amplifying the wind's natural whisper into a deeper, more localized roar for those standing within them. This transforms the lines from mere images into instruments, turning the entire pampa into a kind of colossal, Aeolian harp played by the weather itself. The purpose likely intertwined with the spiritual beliefs of the Nazca people, for whom water and fertility in such a dry land were paramount. The sound of the wind, given a specific voice by their sacred lines, could have been perceived as the direct response of mountain deities or ancestor spirits. It pushes the boundaries of archaeoacoustics to its limit, challenging us to listen not just to chambers and temples, but to the altered voice of a landscape. It suggests that the ultimate acoustic anomaly may be one we can no longer fully hear, a conversation between human geometry and the wind that has been ongoing for 2,000 years, waiting for us to understand that some messages are written not just for the eyes but for the very air. The wind's voice across the Nazca lines was a dialogue with the sky, but our final journey is one of profound inner quiet. The colossal Buddhist monument of Borobudur in Java presents an acoustic anomaly of a different kind, a masterful engineering of silence. This is not a place of echoes or resonant tones, but a carefully staged auditory pilgrimage. The structure itself is a massive mandala in stone, a three-dimensional guide to enlightenment. Pilgrims do not enter a chamber, they begin a clockwise ascent, moving through three distinct realms of existence: the world of desire at the base, the world of forms in the middle, and finally, the formless world of pure spirit at the summit. The genius of Borobudur is that this spiritual map is also an acoustic pathway. The journey begins on wide, open terraces. Here, the sounds of the living world are present. The rustle of leaves, distant voices, the calls of birds from the surrounding jungle. It is the acoustic equivalent of everyday life, full of sensory distraction. But as the pilgrim ascends, the architecture gradually changes. The path narrows, winding through high, enclosed corridors. The open vistas are replaced by stone walls covered in intricate relief carvings depicting the life of the Buddha and the laws of karma. These walls do more than tell stories, they act as massive sound baffles. The noise from the lower levels is physically blocked, its energy absorbed by the countless carved surfaces. The higher you climb, the more the outside world recedes, not just visually but sonically. The chatter of the mind, represented by the chatter of the world, is intentionally left behind. This culminates at the very top. Here, the narrow corridors open onto wide, circular terraces, bare and serene. They are dotted with 72 perforated, bell-shaped stupas, each housing a silent, serene statue of the Buddha. The air is still. The only sounds are perhaps the soft shuffle of your own feet and the whisper of the wind through the latticed stone. This is the engineered soundscape of enlightenment, an absolute, focused quiet. The architects of Borobudur demonstrated a breathtaking understanding of human psychology and spiritual practice. They knew that the path to inner peace required a shedding of external noise. Their mastery of acoustics was not used to amplify a divine voice, but to help the pilgrim quiet the internal one. By designing a physical ascent that systematically stripped away auditory distraction, they created the perfect container for meditation. The silent summit is not an absence of design. It is the design's ultimate goal, a sonic void, purpose built to hold the profound silence of awakening. In this sacred geometry, stone becomes a guide for consciousness, using the careful management of sound and its deliberate absence to map the journey from a noisy world to the perfect peace within. From engineered silence at a temple's peak, we return to the broader chorus. This journey from whispering domes to singing stones reveals a hidden layer of ancient genius. We have moved through spaces that were never meant to be silent. They were dynamic instruments, their very stones tuned for a purpose that transcended mere shelter or symbolism. Sound was a powerful, deliberate tool, a medium for ritual, a method of clear communication across vast distances, and perhaps, as the oracle chamber of Malta suggests, a technology for gently shifting the boundaries of human awareness itself. Modern science provides a vocabulary for these phenomena. We can map resonance, measure reverberation, and understand the physics of a standing wave within the Great Pyramid's chamber. We can explain the chirp of El Castillo through the precise mathematics of step reflection. Yet, for all our analytical power, the profound why often remains just out of reach, shrouded in the mists of lost belief and oral tradition. This gap points to something deeper than mere acoustical accident. It hints at a worldview where the universe itself was understood as a vibrational reality, a cosmic symphony in which human beings could participate through the architecture of sacred space. These echoes from the past do more than intrigue us. They challenge our modern assumptions. They remind us that our ancestors were not primitive. They were sophisticated engineers of human experience, masters of multi-sensory design who wove meaning into every dimension of their world: sight, space, and crucially, sound. They crafted environments where a handclap could summon a deity's call, where a whispered secret could travel on a curve of stone, and where the very wind across a desert line might sing with intentional voice. So we are left with a resonant question hanging in the air, much like the final note from a granite pillar in Hampi. What other secrets might we uncover if we truly lend an ear to the ancient world? If we listen not just for the stories told in glyphs and paintings, but for the stories encoded in frequency and reverberation, the search is ongoing. Each new measurement, each thoughtful experiment in archaeoacoustics brings us closer to hearing history as it was meant to be heard. We would love to know which of these acoustic anomalies resonated most with you. Was it the directed whisper of a Mithraea or the landscape-scale hum theorized at Nazca? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to join more journeys into the heart of history's greatest puzzles, be sure to subscribe. The stones have been waiting to speak for millennia. Our task is simply to learn how to listen.